Hi, Shalom, Shalom. I'm going to start off this video by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honor to the apostles and the elder bishops of Great Millstone that rule well, that teach well, while learning truth 100% according to the Bible. I also want to say Shalom to the elect, the 144,000 men, prophet, servants scattered abroad the four corners of the earth, and Shalom to you, Akwaf, which are you sisters that are sincere in your children, Shalom. And then today's video is going to be building off of the news that happened yesterday, where you got this situation that occurred in Chicago. As you can see from the video title, it says 4 dead and multiple injured in a Chicago mass shooting. Right. So these are the times and seasons in which it is that we're living in, brothers and sisters. That's why it's important for us to be moving circumspect in these times, And I'm actually start off with that precept. And this is Ephesians chapter 5. And I'm going to start at verse 15 in the KJV. It says, see then, right, that ye walk circumspectly, right? Circumspectly meaning paying attention to your surroundings, moving with wisdom, being cautious, being circumspect, not as fools, right, but as wise, right? And this is the reason why, verse 16, redeeming the times, right? Because the days are evil, and that's what we see happening. We're living in some very deadly, serious times. We know that, the love of many is waxing cold out here, as it tells us in Matthew 24:12, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And that's ultimately what we see occurring. It's a lot of violence happening out here in these cities. And, people are becoming worse and worse as time is going on. So that's why it's important for us, brothers and sisters that are in this truth, to be moving with wisdom, being circumspect, paying attention to our surroundings, the places that we go to, just being wise, man. You want to do this every single day, because the days out here are definitely evil, man, And I'm actually getting this precept right here. This is Ephesians 5:17. It said, wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. And we know ultimately how about Shem Yahushua is the one that is bringing all of these evils, man. He's bringing the judgments that is ultimately coming forth in this earth, especially in this place, America, Babylon, and Great. So us knowing that, we got to ultimately be in the spirit of wisdom, man. It's not the time to be going into, big gatherings where a lot of people are at and things of that nature. No, you want to try to avoid situations like that, if you can, of course. This is just the time to be allowing wisdom to meet us at every thought, thinking before we do certain things, especially in this time period, right? So I'm actually get this too. This is Colossians chapter 4. And I'm going to start at verse 5. It said, walk in wisdom towards them that are without, right? And that's what we got to do, brothers and sisters, in this time period, because we know these people in this world, 2/3 of our people and also these other heathens, these people don't have wisdom. They're not walking in a mindset of knowing that the Lord is watching them and to be on their best behavior and how to conduct themselves. No, that's not what's coming to these people's mind. So us having that wisdom through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, we got to allow that to be in our minds at all time, us moving with wisdom through this wicked world, man. Because as I said before, it's only going to get worse and worse, right? And it says redeeming the time, right? And this is verse 6. And it says, let your speech be always with grace, right? Knowing how to approach a man, knowing how to talk to people. Because like I said, these people got all types of demons on them. And, they're just waiting to bug out, man, at any given moment. That's why we got to ultimately be, wise in how we deal with people, in this society, knowing how these people's minds are. They're easy to go off. They don't have self-control like we do in the spirit. So, we got to be wise, basically. And it says, season with salt, that ye may know how ye ought to answer every man, because certain situations can be dissolved just off how you deal with people, how you talk to them, how you carry yourself. You can diffuse a lot of situations, and I'm actually get another precept just on that wisdom, man. Right. This is St. Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. It said, behold, I send you forth as sheep, right, in the midst of wolves. And that's what we are, brothers and sisters of the hopeful elect in this truth. We're sheep, docile, harmless animals. But these people in the world are wolves. They're ravenous. They're violent. They're angry. They're hateful. That's what's in these people's spirit and in their mind in this place, right? So it says, be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So we just got to be moving with wisdom in these times, brothers and sisters, because it's very evil out here, man. So I'm actually getting to the video now so we can see what it is that they're talking about. But, situations like this are only going to continue to get worse and worse over time, man, because we're living in that time period where the Lord is getting ready to bring forth a lot of judgment. And these evils are only going to continue to magnify and get worse. You're going to see more situations like this occur in the very near future. And us knowing these things is why we ultimately operate in that spirit of wisdom. And I'm going to get that precept as well before I play the video, right? This is Proverbs 22:3. It said a prudent man, right, meaning a wise man, foreseeth the evil, right, and hideth himself. How do we hide ourselves? In the confines of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, praying to the Lord to have mercy upon us as we operate through this wicked world, knowing that we're living in some very evil times, knowing that people out here don't care about each other, knowing that there are bug outs and weirdos out here that are just seeking to do all type of wickedness, man. And we pray the Lord ultimately to have that protection upon us, right? It says, a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished, right? And that's a lot of these people out here in this place, America, in this world, man. These people are simple. They have no idea the time and seasons that we're living in. They don't understand that we're in a spiritual battle and that things are intensifying, man. And we're getting closer and closer to the end of this place, America. That's why these evils are only going to continue to get worse. And I'm going to actually prove that as well. This second Esdras, chapter 14, verse 16, it said, for yet greater evils, right, meaning bad times, than those which thou hast seen happen shall be done hereafter. And this was the Lord speaking to the prophet Esdras about the time period in which it is we're in now, which what will be occurring in the latter days, right? And that's what we see happening, greater evils, man, because it's only going to get worse, right? This is verse 17. It said, for look how much the world, right, shall be weakened through age, so much the more shall evils increase upon them, right, meaning the people in this place that dwell therein, man. And that's what we're going to see happening. You're going to continue to see these evils only magnify and get worse and worse as time progressing, because ultimately it's the Lord that's bringing forth the judgment, man. He's bringing forth all of these evils into this world. He's allowing these situations to manifest and to take place, man, you know. And it all goes back into the people's wickedness, man, why the Lord is allowing these things to come to pass. And I'm actually go to that precept as well through the Spirit. Then I get into the video. Bear with me, brothers. This is 2nd Esdras, chapter 15. And I'm going to start at verse 5. It said, behold, saith the Lord, Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua, I will bring plagues upon the world, right? The sword representing destruction, chaos, people shooting up malls and schools and all of this madness that we ultimately see people doing day to day in this place, right? All of those are plagues, man, right? Because we know that the Lord is the one that's ultimately in control over both life and death, evil and good, right? As it tells you in Amos 3:6, you know, shall there be evil, right, in a city and the Lord have not done it, man. So it says famine, death, and destruction, right? And all of these things are manifesting is because, as it says down in verse 6, for wickedness have exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled, right? As I read in Matthew 24:12 earlier, you know, iniquity is abounding in this place, America. So that's why the Lord is about to allow these judgments to start, you know, getting worse and worse and more severe, man. It says, therefore saith the Lord, right? Verse 8, I will hold my tongue no more as touching their wickedness, which they profanely commit. Neither will I suffer them in those days in which they wickedly exercise themselves, right? So ultimately, the Lord is getting tired of all of the wickedness, mainly of his people, the 2/3 of the nation of Israel, and all of these other heathen nations in this place, man. And he's getting to the point where he's about to pour out that judgment. And you're about to start seeing more situations like this occur. So us brothers and sisters, knowing the time and season that we're in, of course, we should be moving more circumspectly, man. You know, I'm talking about being circumspect wherever you go. You could be at the store. You could be with your kids, you know, wherever you might be going, brothers and sisters. We just got to always remain in the spirit, knowing that we're living in very deadly, serious times and that these people out here are not moving and thinking how we are, man, you know. So I'm going to finish reading it. It said, behold, the innocent and righteous blood crieth unto me, and the souls of the just complain continually, man. And that's ultimately the hopeful elect, brothers and sisters. That's what we're doing to Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, you know, complaining to the Lord, telling them how wicked and evil this world is, man, and how we ready for him to return and ultimately to put this place down, man, you know. So I'm actually now getting to the video, right? Bear with me, right? So before I start this video, I want to say fair use on the 1976 Copyright Act. Not getting paid for this video. This is only for educational purposes only, right?
Take a look at your screen as Fox 32 Chicago reports this Thursday morning, a mass shooting in River North sent at least a dozen people to local hospitals on Wednesday night. Tragic news we are following on the eve of July 4th. We're learning this happened around 11:30 Wednesday night into the early morning hours of this Thursday. Transitioning your screen to give you a live look, a beautiful skyline shot there, the windy city of Chicago. But we also want to head down to the ground outside of that nightclub to share the very latest details. You can see markers are still on the ground outside of that nightclub on this Thursday morning. We're learning at least 4 people have died from gunshot wounds. 14 others have been hospitalized following a drive-by shooting in Chicago. Police confirming that information this Thursday.
Right. And you hear what it is that they basically said as well, that this occurred at like a bar or, like a club or something of that nature, right? This is why it tells us in the scriptures to not be in the house of feasting, man, right? Because things like this ultimately occur, and I'm actually get that precept, man, right? This is Ecclesiastes chapter 7. I'm going to start at verse 2. It said it is better to go to the house of mourning, right? Being in the state of mourning, than to go to the house of feasting, right? Partying, celebrating, people probably in there, celebrating for the so-called 4th of July, right? And then they're drinking and having a good time. And hey, that's when the Lord brings forth those judgments, man, when people ultimately least expect it. As it tells you in Proverbs 14:12, there's a way which seemeth right unto a man or a woman, but the end thereof are the ways of death. So to a lot of those people that went to that nightclub, it probably felt like the right thing to do at that time. But hey, it resulted in what happened. That's why we got to ultimately move with wisdom, man. Because as it tells us in Romans 6:23, for the wages of sin is death, man. People out here trying to live their lives and ultimately do the things in which it is that they want to do, following after their lustful fleshly desires. And it ends up with them being judged, man, by the Lord. Right. It says, for that is the end of all men. Right. And the living, right, will lay it to his heart, meaning his mind. And that's us using wisdom, knowing that, hey, you don't want to be in a place where, possibly anything could pop off at you, just especially knowing the time and season that we're in. You don't want to be in a restaurant or a bar, whatever the place may be, and you're surrounded by tons of people who you don't know, and you don't know what's on these people's mind. You don't know what they can possibly do. I mean, people just bugged out here, man. So knowing that, we got to know how to move out here and deal in this world, man. This is verse 3. It says sorrow is better than laughter, right? Because it really is better to be in a sorrowful state than being in a laughing, mirthful type of spirit, man. Because as it tells us in the scriptures, Psalms 34:18, the Lord is nigh unto those that be of a broken and contrite spirit, roughly paraphrasing it. So you want to be in a state of sorrow, because then the Lord will be closer to you, man. Right? For by the sadness of the countenance, the heart, meaning the mind, is made better. And that's true, because when you in a lower state, guess what? You learn a lot of things when you're going through your sufferings and your trials. You learn a lot from suffering and going through states of, being in a mourning spirit. The Lord put a lot upon you, so that's why it's good to be in that spirit than being in a spirit of having fun, folly, laughing, joking, all of that, not saying you can't do those things, because of course we know it's a balance to everything, but you just don't want to be overindulgent in that type of spirit or lifestyle or behavior, and this is verse 4. It said the heart of the wise, right, is in the house of mourning, right, but the hearts of fools is in the house of mirth, right, having fun, partying, going to clubs, celebrating pagan traditions, all of these things that Jake and Eve ultimately likes to indulge in, that ultimately why they get judged and find themselves in these bad situations that occur is due to them ultimately being in that mirthful feasting spirit, man. Right. But this is Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 5. It said it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise. Right. See, and that's what a lot of people don't want to hear, because like I said, these people want to do things their way in this society. They're not moving with wisdom. They're not moving in the ways of, thinking before they react. These people just walking and going whatever the flesh tells them to do. That's ultimately what they engage in. Right. So they ultimately don't want to hear the correction of the wise when we tell them, oh, that's not a smart thing to do. Or, oh, you got to be more circumspect. Oh, you got to watch the way you're moving. And the days are evil out here, man. And you just want to be, watchful, paying attention to things, man. You don't want to just be simple, right? But people don't like to hear those things, especially amongst our people, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American men and women, man. 2/3 of them, I should say, they don't want to hear anything about them moving more cautiously. They just want to do whatever they want to do. Right. And that's why the Lord is going to continue to keep bringing forth all of these judgments, man, because people are out here just doing things in which it is that they seem fit for themselves to do. And it's not the way the Lord wants you to operate in. And that's leading to them being judged. It says, then for a man to hear the songs of fools, right? And that's what these people out here want to hear, man. They want to hear the songs of fools. They want to hear that you can go out to the club and party and do whatever it is you want to do and go drink and all of that different type of stuff and be around a lot of people at these big gatherings and events. That's what people want to hear, man. But that's not wise. That's not the thing that you really want to be doing in these times. Seeing as though that the days are evil, man. So that's very important. So I'm gonna get back into this video just so we can watch a little bit more of it, man. But like I said, you know, these are the times and seasons that we're in, man. And like I said before, these things are only going to continue to get worse as time progresses. You're going to see more situations like this happening, man. Because people are just at that point now, you know, where, hey, the Lord is putting these spirits on these people to just bug out, man. Especially those that are not of his elect, man, that are not moving in the spirit. You know, these people are just ready to crash out at any time, man. Right. And that all goes back to them lacking wisdom, not having any understanding, man. Full of all type of different spirits, man. You know, as we know, it also says in the book of Sirach, you know, and I'm going to get that. Also known as Ecclesiasticus, right? Chapter 39, verse 28. And it says, there be spirits that are created for vengeance, man, right? Because ultimately we know, as I said earlier in the video, the Lord is the one that's ultimately in control over both good and evil. So the Lord allowed that situation to occur that I'm watching in this video where you see multiple people were, you know, deleted and shot. You know, the Lord allowed that to occur, man, right? And it says, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him, right? Talking about the Heavenly Father that made them, right? And I'm going to just go to another precept just to prove that the Lord is the one that's ultimately in control of this situation that we see occurred, man, right? And that's why we want to be moving spiritual, you know, and not carnally, man, because these people out here in this world is through, man. Right. This is Deuteronomy 32 and verse 39. It says, see now that I, even I am he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. So there's ultimately nobody that could have got these people out of the situation that they were in, man, because it was just that time period for the Lord ultimately to bring forth that judgment upon them, man. This is why we always tell you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians to turn back to the Lord, man. Right. And I'm going to get that precept. This is Sirach. Chapter 5, verse 7, it says, make no tarrying, right, to turn to the Lord, right, which means don't be taking your time to do it, man, because you see how evil the world is out here, man, and you can be judged at any given time, man. You know, you can be anywhere in this world. That's just how crazy things are at this time, you know. And it said, and put not off from day to day, right, for suddenly, right, when you least suspect it, shall the wrath of the Lord come forth. And that's what we seen happen in this video. That was the wrath of the Lord, man, right? And in thy security, right, when you're thinking everything good, when you're thinking you're comfortable, when you're thinking that things is going your way, right, thou shalt be destroyed and perish in the day of vengeance, man. And this is ultimately what happened to people when they're not seeking the Lord, man, when they're not operating in that spirit of wisdom. You know, these things tend to occur, you know. So, yeah. Get back in this video.
Stay to our content partners.